there, Internet, MegaMogwai here, and I got another Legends of Runeterra video for guys. Today, I'm back at it with my naked shirt because I want to see something in the comment section that will actually make me smile today, as this video will unfortunately not. Today, we are going to be talking about patch 2.9, aka, in my opinion, the worst balance patch in Legends of Runeterra to date. So it's gonna get pretty dark, maybe a little bit rambly as well, though I've been thinking, and at the end of the day, this is a card game, right? That's what it is. It's a game. So I'm gonna try to actually put the 12-year-old in check a little bit, not lose my mind and go crazy over things, and try to be a little bit more mature about this and just talk about my displeasure. Is that how you say the word, displeasure? Hopefully. Over the decisions made as of late, and specifically those that culminated into this balance patch, all right? Again, it's a game, all right? Even though it has some big implications for me, which is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about it, besides the fact that I'm just a raging hothead, but I'm also a content creator, and the health of my channel and my videos and everything are directly correlated with the state of the game. So naturally, I don't like talking bad about this game. It does me no good. But I also want to be honest with my content, and I want to give you guys my genuine perspective. But I can do so with a bit of a level head. You know, I can keep my composure with it. So I'll try to express what I feel about this without losing my shit. At least not as much as I normally would. I'm gonna try to be an adult about it. Let's see me fail doing that. Let's talk about patch 2.9. Like I said, the worst patch in the history of Legends of Runeterra. Again, in my opinion, but I do feel there are quite a few people out there who will agree with me on this take. And I'm going to explain why I feel that is the case. In case you guys don't know, I did a video recently on the current state of the metagame, talking about Azir Irelia and how it is the most oppressive deck that has existed in the game, and the effects, the specific effects that it has on the meta, alongside the problematic power level of Thresh Nasus and the oppressiveness of TLC, aka Trundle Lysandra Control, with Spectral Matron into the Watcher as a combo, which is mainly the horrendous aspect of that deck. I go well into detail into like all the problems and everything. I'm not gonna do that in this video because I feel like it would make it unnecessarily long, and I would be repeating myself at that point. I already expressed my issues with everything about this meta, why this meta is as bad as it is, why so many people are struggling playing the game right now and having fun, and why there's a lot of like, you know, there's a lot of like vocal opinions on it on social media in general. If you want to check out that video, it's in my video playlist. You know, like it's basically me. The only like thumbnail with like my face in it, where it says Turbo Meta. You can check that out. I'm gonna skip that, and I'm gonna talk about the patch directly. Needless to say, I and many others expected some significant changes to come alongside this patch, not only in the form of nerfs, but also potentially buffs as well, specifically to Bilgewater as a region. And let's just say that this patch is disappointing. That's one way, you know, that's a nice way to put it without going too deep. So, yeah. Speaking of deep, you can't play deep with Azir on the ladder, and I don't think that's going to change much after these notes. So let's actually talk about the message that Riot has had here. Let's go over this statement. There's some things that I want to point out before we actually jump onto the changes themselves, right? All right, let's do this. We've seen a lot of conversation in the community lately on the topic of live design. Players are passionate about it, and we're passionate about it as well. We believe that live design is strongly connected to one of our fundamental beliefs, which is that every player should be able to access all cards and all decks without spending money. That fundamental aspect of Legends of Runeterra unlocks our team to be able to make card updates without punishing players for past card and deck acquisition choices. So this is arguably the biggest reason why I stuck around with Legends of Runeterra. The very beginning, in case you guys don't know, I used to cover Magic the Gathering Arena. And one of the main reasons why I stopped doing so is because I believe they did not handle the transition from physical to digital well. And looking now at the current state of Magic the Gathering Arena, my concerns were, what is the best way to describe this? Like, my English sometimes fails here, but basically they came to life, right? Like it actually, it's pretty much just as or worse than what I expected at this point. My own personal opinion, right? I still think Magic is a great game, but I do believe that Magic the Gathering Arena is a failure in many aspects. And one of the things about digital Magic the Gathering, one of the problems with that is, like I said, the transition from physical to digital is not an easy one for this genre. Believe it or not, ever since we got digital card games and people started playing card games on computers instead of playing card games, buying them from booster packs and playing them physically with friends, there were some changes with this shift that led to some how do I express this? Basically, there was some massive shifts in regards to pacing. Some tremendous implications from this transition, basically. And the biggest one is the ability to, well, first of all, there are some positive ones, like the ability to modify cards and buff them and nerf them. And this is necessary because now the information that we get from card games is sped up dramatically. So metagames are solved much quicker than before. Because before, when we all played card games back in the OG days where we would go to a comic shop and buy our booster packs for Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic the Gathering and play with our own friends right there in our little bubble within our city or town, we didn't really have access to much information until big tournaments happened. Like back in the day, for example, with Pro Tours and Magic the Gathering. We didn't really know what was the best when a new set came out until a big tournament happened and we had access to the top 8 deck list. Then we started getting an idea of what was really good and what wasn't. So things progressed at a much slower pace. With access to digital and playing the game on computers with people across all over the world, we have not only a much bigger sample size, all of us have access to insane amounts of data, which allow us to figure out what card combinations work better, what archetypes are overtuned, which ones are underwhelming, what works, what doesn't. Metagames, like I said, get figured out much quicker. This means that if you want to be able to make card games feel fresh in a digital environment, you have to do one or two things, either A or B, or ideally both. A is release sets consistently. If you are releasing new card content on a consistent basis, you keep the game fresh. B is balance changes. I do not believe A is enough, and that is why I stopped playing Magic the Gathering Arena, because one of the main problems that I had was whenever a card was super broken or an archetype was broken, it took them forever to end up banning the card because unfortunately they are against modifying their cards because they are still being printed physically. And if you change the text or the numbers in a card, then all of a sudden your digital version of the card does not match with your paper version of that, right? This is something that Legends of Runeterra did extremely well. It's not the first card game to implement regular balance changes, but the way it did so was spectacular. They wouldn't go overboard with their changes, but they would do them regularly, and they would implement a lot of buffs, a lot of nerfs. You know, as minor as they could be, they kept the metagame fresh and flowing constantly. And even if you're playing the game every single day of the year, like me, you know, if you're a weirdo like myself, it would still stay fresh, and you wouldn't really get tired of it as easily, right? Especially if you're a card game fanatic like myself. So it was a great environment for me, right? The problem is, at a certain point, I believe around the time where they released the KDA cards, the quality and quantity of these balance changes downfell significantly. And I don't know if this is actually a decline in their, like, the capabilities of the design team, or if this is an internal decision reflecting more on the casual player base of the game. Because what this points out is that even though they have an excellent monetary system behind their card game that allows people to get the full collection potentially without spending a dime, some people still want to speed up that process and get a card earlier and because they want to try a specific deck. So some people may end up spending money. And I'm pretty sure that some numbers may indicate that such consistent changes may have alienated a portion of the player base. This is a legitimate reasoning behind them deciding to make less balance changes, because otherwise it makes no sense to me why the quality of upgrades has gone down. And I believe that if this is the case, it is a terrible lapse of judgment or lack of judgment, English, on their part, because one of the biggest strengths of Legends of Runeterra doesn't seem like it exists anymore. And that is their regular balance updates, because this balance patch, underwhelming is just a very polite way to put it, man. It is atrocious. Absolutely atrocious, and I'm going to explain why. But let's continue reading a little bit more. Ultimately, our goal is to make Legends of Runeterra the most fun we can. We make live design decisions. We don't focus on any single aspect when making them. And they talk about all the complex data models that they have, all different parameters that they use to measure whether a deck is strong, weak, fun, how it feels relative to the meta, etc., etc. Like here, they're just kind of like flexing on all the data they have access to make these decisions, right? I believe this is a bit of a smokescreen. They had this before. Nothing has really changed from a year ago and now, really, for them to have changed their balance, frequency, and everything so dramatically, besides an incentive to make them change on the amount of nerfs and buffs that they apply to the game. So I don't, these two paragraphs are a little bit frustrating to me, especially the third one right here, because it says, we try to focus on our changes to be as targeted as possible and to avoid collateral damage or unintended consequences to decks we don't want to affect. This is reasonable. Making a small amount of changes can have large impacts on the metagame. We also try to let the community find new ways to evolve playstyles and the metagame to change over time without live design card changes. One of the amazing things about the card game genre is the ability the community has to explore and discover new strategies that can dramatically shift the meta over time without any card changes. This is not the 90s anymore, right? This could be true like 10 years ago, 20 years ago even. Now, if you are implying that it is still possible to dramatically shift the meta that we are currently in with Azir, Irelia on top, you are being either naive or disingenuous. One of the two. As simple as that. That process is fun, and we don't want to artificially disrupt the process by implementing live design card changes too quickly or too often. This sounds really pretty, but it is just another smokescreen and a very weak excuse for we're not going to do anything nearly as much as we did so before. Again, the only logical reasoning that can come to mind is that there's a lot of casual players that don't want their OP decks to be changed, and they get upset and they leave the game and they see this affect their numbers. But I'd like to see the effect of this lack of action over these decks over their play numbers as well. Because maybe if people stop playing the game after they refuse to admit the horrendous state of this current metagame, maybe they'll be like, oh, well, we're back to making regular change, and they'll come up with some other bullshit excuse for their change in judgment, right? I'm sorry. This is just, I don't buy this. I don't buy this. Because you have to explain to me what changed between before and now for this. Like, this does not explain that. I'm not going to dive more into that. Like, we had an amazing amount of balance changes, high quality ones that kept the game fresh constantly, and it made it so that things that were, at the top for too long would get toned down and other stuff would get buffed so that they had their time to shine, and it was phenomenal. And all of a sudden, we just don't have that anymore. And I am not buying this as the reasoning behind that. Like, this is just, I've seen this logic before, and it's a placeholder for something else. That's all I'm going to say. However, there are times when it's clear the changes are necessary to ensure the experience is fun and exciting. Taliyah and Malphite are both clear examples that need live design attention. It's an easy decision to make because so many of our inputs in the decision-making process clearly indicate that Taliyah, Malphite, and their primary deck are not meeting our standard. let's jump directly to the changes here that they're talking about. As you guys can see, Taliyah got buffed by 2 stats. So from a 2-4 to a 3-5. And when she leveled up, she's a 4-6 now. And Malphite requires 10 total cost of mana of landmarks being summoned instead of 12. I think these changes are phenomenal. These changes are of the type of quality that we've seen in the past from Riot. Again, not going overboard with the buffs, because it's very easy to do so, and other card games have made the mistake of doing so in the past, and legitimately changes that could actually make a difference. I do still believe like Taliyah needs 1 or 2 more like proper landmarks to synergize with, because I don't think the card pool right now has anything that Taliyah is amazing with. And I feel like that's just a matter of time. But these stat gains definitely do help her, give her more of a 5-drop-ish sort of presence. Especially if you manage to level her up regularly. Having a 4-6 stat line is super legit. And Malphite is significantly easier to level up now, which could also have big implications as well. So I like this. I like these changes. The problem is, first of all, these are some of the most obvious buffs that should have happened a while back, especially when it comes to Taliyah. Second of all, this pales in comparison to the amount of buffs that we used to receive in the past. Like, if you go back 1 year and look at balance changes, like the amount of buffs that we would see was like so much more than this. I'm not necessarily complaining about quality, especially regarding the buffs here. I'm complaining about quantity. There's so much more to be done, and there's 4 total changes, man. 4 total changes. Like, what the fuck? However, there are times when it's clear that changes are necessary to ensure the experience is fun and exciting. Okay, I'm repeating the same part again. Sorry about that. Irelia and Azir are not so obvious because there are different inputs that contradict each other, and it takes time to gather information to make a decision. In the first 3 weeks of Guardian of the Ancient, we have seen Irelia and Azir's deck rise and fall in popularity over efficacy. English. This is fine. No, this is not fine. Sorry. This is fine. This is okay. It's true. Like, it wasn't very clear at first. At first, the community was very divided on the deck, and as time passes, only did we all shift to one side, right? And it's fine. At first, the data wasn't clear. There's a lot of intricate aspects with the deck that aren't super obvious at first, unless you're playing it like super regularly. I wasn't playing it myself because I was, I'm an edgy wannabe. So I stayed away from the deck, so it took me longer to realize just how busted it was. And like I said, it wasn't super clear at first, and it's completely fine. Like, we should not fault them for this, for taking their time and actually, reaching the conclusion a little bit later than expected, perhaps. Even though the design team should have been aware of the power level of the deck to begin with, but I'm not even going to go there, okay? This is what I have an issue with. In the first 3 weeks of Guardian of the Ancients, we've seen Irelia and Azir's deck rise and fall in popularity and efficacy. The way they word this, it seems as if the deck has gone like roller coaster mode, right? Up and down, and it's had like... And that's just not the case. Rise and fall indicates a significant shift in success. And what happened is the deck got really high up, and then everybody and their mother tried to adapt to it as best as they could. It shaped the meta around it, and thus the win rate dropped down a little bit to 52%. Now, the latest data shows that over a sample size of 64,000 games, with a 28% representation over the entire ranked metagame, the deck stood at a 55% win rate. Over 64,000 games. Like, just to give you some reference, the next one, like the next deck after that had like not even half that amount. And it stayed at 55% in a metagame that revolves around it. There's so many decks that Azir Irelia pushes out of the meta that actually are performing well in tournaments when you get to ban her, like Deep, and even Frozen Thralls with Lysandra, for example. Decks that just have little to no chance against Irelia Azir, and thus should not be played on ladder, but are actually pretty good decks outside of that. It is undoubtedly a case of a super oppressive archetype that limits a lot, and it's encouraging so much of this fast-paced gameplay that we're seeing. And for them to say rise and fall as if the deck has had a shift like this is just disingenuous. It's not correct, and it's a very bad use. It's a very bad use of words here. Over time, our decision on whether or not we should make balance changes on the deck has shifted. All right, and again, that's fine. You know, opinions can change, and we should not ever judge others for that. We love the play pattern of Irelia Azir. We, as well as Blade Dance. Again, I'm going to repeat this. We love the play pattern of Irelia Azir as well as Blade Dance. This is the point of me reading this statement in which I almost just like lost my shit. I couldn't believe what I was reading. We love the play pattern of Irelia Azir as well as Blade Dance. Again, it's a card game. I'm going to calm down. All right? But I'm going to say, what the fuck is this sentence? Really? You love the play pattern of Azir Irelia? You love the play pattern of Azir Irelia. This is the same design team that deemed fast speed relentless pursuit too toxic and thus required a nerf. Let me elaborate a little bit on that. Relentless Pursuit, the 3-mana Demacia spell, used to be fast speed. And before, there was a particular interaction in which players could go for, if you went for a skill or for a spell of your own and initiated a stack, the opponent could respond to that stack with Relentless Pursuit and thus trigger a rally which would allow them to attack without giving back initiative to you, and therefore not giving you enough time to develop another potential blocker to try to survive. This was deemed toxic for the game. But now we have a mechanic that allows you to effectively generate an attack at focus speed. So what I mean by this is you play the unit and the attack goes off without even generating a skill or anything. Like the attack just goes off without giving you back initiative, which means that even if it's your turn with the attack token and your opponent is done with their crazy attack, or 4 or 5 attacks rather, they can still just play a unit and shove another attack down your throat. And they deem this play pattern something that they love. I have a big issue with this statement. Like, I am being very gentle with this. Like, I have a big problem with this statement right here. A massive problem. I believe there's either two things happening here. It's either blatant arrogance and just refusal to admit that shit hit the fan when they designed this mechanic, or just a complete out of touch, like just them being completely out of touch with the community. Because I've never seen so many Reddit posts and so many comments on Twitter and social media in general of people just so sick of this deck because of its play patterns. Because of the fact that it can just kill you because of how unfun it feels to play against. So for them to say that they love the play pattern is very concerning to me. Because I don't know if I want to play this game anymore if that's what their opinion on the archetype is. I really don't. And hey, like I said, it's not the end of the world. It's a card game, right? But it's important for me because it's my job. And I don't know if I see eye to eye with the designers anymore. Like I've never like agreed with them on everything, but this is just like such a deferring like perspective that I don't know if this is the game for me. Like I really don't. It's very concerning. This is very concerning. I can't sugarcoat this. This statement right here it sets off the alarms for me. And people can say you're overreacting, you're being too dramatic, whatever. I don't think I am. I don't think I'm the only one who read this and we're like, what? Nani? So I'm just gonna leave it there. We've learned that a ton of players love it too. Okay. And we want to keep the feel of the deck intact. Fantastic. However, our most recent information indicates that the deck is just too powerful. So we're making 2 very targeted changes. We hope to maintain the fun while opening up opportunities for other strategies and to reduce the frustration of playing against it. We'll continue to monitor the metagame as it evolves and we'll consider more changes going forward if necessary. All right, so these are the 2 changes. And that's it. The Blossoming Blade is now a 5-drop, and the Inspiring Martial, this is a very big nerf. Important to note. It is a 6-drop now, and it's a 4/5. This is a massive nerf. This is more of a nerf than you regularly see on cards. It's a huge hit. And for them to say that this change is, they want to do this so that it doesn't hit Azir Lucian, we want to reduce the amount of collateral damage to other decks. I don't understand this because Inspiring Martial is a very strong card in Azir Lucian because of the Sand Soldier. So I don't understand this statement at all. Like this change hits Azir Lucian just as hard as it hits Azir Irelia, or close to at least. So I don't really get that. Regardless, massive nerf, more than I was asking for, but I was asking this nerf alongside other things, right? So this and the Blossoming Blade. The Blossoming Blade is now a 5-drop. I don't think this change matters much at all. Sure, it slows down the deck perhaps a little bit. It messes up their curve. The Inspiring Martial curve and the Blossoming Blade curve is different. But as long as you're able to level up Azir, a lot of times when you're using Blossoming Blades in the opponent's turn and you're getting like actual strong momentum and value out of her, it's well past turn 4 anyways. So I really do not think that this nerf is going to matter that much at all. I do feel the Inspire Martial nerf is definitely going to matter, but the fact that they left the 1-drop, the Sparring Student, intact is a huge red flag, because that 1-drop is in no way, shape, or form balanced in its current form. I repeated form various times, whatever. So that's a problem. I didn't want them to touch Emperor Days because of the reasoning that they apply here, especially for Azir Lucian. But them not targeting Flawless Duet, them not targeting Azir, considering they don't want to change the Blade Dance mechanics since they love it so much, is really, really worrying, because I don't think the deck is going anywhere. I think, will the power level of the deck go down a little bit? For sure. Especially because of the Inspire Martial nerf and this nerf as well. Like, sure, yes, it will. It will be a bit weaker. But it still will completely obliterate a lot of decks it has an amazing matchup against. And it still will be incredibly oppressive. I have no doubt about this. I could be wrong. Maybe I just don't think the Inspire Martial nerf is going to get them there. And I wouldn't be so against this balance patch if Azir Irelia was the only problem. First of all, I don't think this is anywhere near enough. Second of all, it's not the only problem. The fact that they refuse to acknowledge the Watcher with Lysandra, the Spectral Matron Watcher combo, is very infuriating, because that deck has been incredibly toxic for months now. It has been shown at a competitive level. Pretty much the vast majority of I say vast majority for not because I don't want to say everybody, but pretty much the vast majority of the top level competitors in this game all have negative things to say about that deck. That deck just pushes control out of the meta. That deck has a lot of very nasty implications, and it has a play pattern that is boring as hell. It's not interesting, and it really does not feel like the way Lysandra was meant to be played. I love Lysandra in decks like the Frozen Thrall archetype. That feels like an actual, a deck that's using all facets of Lysandra. But Spectral Matron with Lysandra, like the way that works, the way you're able to generate multiple copies of the Watcher, and it becomes just this unbeatable win condition that basically says, this is the deck. If your deck does not end the game by turn 8 or 9, you will lose to TLC. I just don't think it's good to have a deck like that, especially a deck with a combo-based finisher like that, be a part of the game when it's proven to be incredibly consistent. Combo decks, like crazy combos like that, should not be so unbelievably consistent. And this deck has been a massive problem in the game for a while. It's very prevalent specifically in tournaments, the Seasonal and the Europe Masters, and I do not understand why they even refuse to acknowledge it. It's like the issue doesn't even exist in their eyes. And that is just crazy to me. Absolutely crazy to me. That's the thing that frustrates me the most about this balance patch. The fact that they just do not even talk about the Watcher. No, the Watcher's fine. Completely fine. And I think we've seen enough tournaments and enough things to just think otherwise, man. It's mind-blowing. And when it comes to Thresh Nasties, I think it's very clear that the early game Shadow Owls package is also slightly overtuned. And that deck has been at the top for way too long. And it would be nice to tone it down. Even though it's a cool archetype, it would be nice to tone it down a little bit. To let other things potentially rise up. We've had the same dominant decks for months now, man. And it, like I said, I'm not even that against Thresh Nasus. I do feel it should be toned down, but for them to not even talk about the Watcher and to make these half-ass changes to Azir Irelia is mind-blowing to me. But it doesn't end here, folks. It does not end here. Because it turns out Irelia got a ninja buff within the bug fixes. Because Irelia should now correctly create Blade Surge in hand on attack the turn she levels up. This means that when she attacks, I mean, this is what I interpret, and when I've seen people talking about in the in social media referencing this, I believe this is the way it works now. Because I never knew, like, nobody ever mentioned any bug around Irelia, not to my knowledge. So now this means, hopefully, I really hope I'm wrong about this, but this supposedly means that as Irelia is attacking and she levels up, she will create Blade Surge in hand upon that attack. Unless there is some bug that meant that sometimes when she leveled up, she would not generate Blade Surge. But I've never seen that happen. I've never seen anybody mention that happening. And anybody that I've seen referencing this bug fix has had the same exact reaction. And that includes some very high level players saying like, okay, she got buffed. Because that means that now when she attacks and she levels up, she'll give you a Blade Surge. So now that means that the deck has even a better, like that makes Irelia even faster at dealing lethal damage output. Which means that low key, the deck could be actually stronger than before because of this. Despite the Martial nerf. Though it's still arguable that this will make the deck a little bit weaker, but I just don't see it, man. I don't see it. 4 changes. That's what we got. And what many deem this to be the most important balance patch to date, we got 4 changes. The community is losing their shit. I completely see why. And I've been rambling for 30 minutes on this. I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I just don't, like, yeah, Taliyah and Malphite, the buffs are nice, but I don't know if I feel like playing this game right now. And it sucks because I have a channel dedicated to it. But this patch is just so, it feels so out of touch. So underwhelming. And it just makes me not want to play. It doesn't even make me want to scream anymore. Like, I just don't want to play. And I'd like to know what you guys think about it. And that's where I'll end this video. Because like I said, at the end of the day, it's a card game. And life is, there's more to life than that, right? Like, you can't just go batshit crazy over a game ultimately, right? But I mean, in my case, it's a bit, it's kind of my job as well. So it does affect me more than would affect others. And yeah, I'm just so disappointed. So that's where I'll leave it at. Thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for daily. Well, we'll see. Stay tuned for content. Love ya this whole day. I'll see you around.